still waiting on, he has to get, they want him to get screenshots.
Hey, so I'm gonna leave out and pop right back in. I was attempting to record. Oh, maybe I got it here. Okay, hang on. That should do it. So I had a recorder that was up. I was going to attempt to record over here. Wasn't working out, and the recording tools were not showing up when I was trying to click it. I think I got it now, though.
Yeah, so I've got recorder going on my end as a host. So I'll record your briefing and share it with you later.
Got it. Can you still hear me now?
I can, and see your slides.
Excellent. One last test. I want to see if you can hear my computer audio. Can you hear that?
What's playing?
I just did a couple of dings on the volume. So looks like no. Yep, that bit's all right. So I had a couple of little videos that I was going to play, but I can skip over that, so not a big deal. More for icebreaker.
Gotcha. I'm not sure what you're using, but when you're sharing in WebEx, there's a drop-down box that says optimize for video, and then share my computer's audio. And then that's when you do that, the audio should come through from your computer.
Beautiful. Yep, I got to it. Thank you. I knew I saw that last week when we were testing, so. Okay, let's try again. So can you hear this?
I can.
Excellent. Hopefully it's not going to be too loud. If it ends up too loud or too soft, just adjust volume accordingly.
So room's still filling up, sir. Again, coming back to lunch. So we'll get started here in a few minutes, and I'll introduce you, and that'll be your cue to start.
Sounds good.
Ladies and gentlemen, please ensure that you mute your mics during the duration of the briefing. If you have questions, please use the chat function within WebEx. Questions will be asked at the end of the briefing or sent to the presenter to answer at a later time. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Senior Master Sergeant Michael Duchesne, and I am the Superintendent of the 341st Comptroller Squadron, Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana, home of the Bucks. On behalf of the Air Force Global Strike Command Virtual PDI team, we would like to welcome Master Sergeant Samuel Spaeth from the Resource Training Center. Sergeant Spaeth is the Chief of Financial Operations Training down there at the center. Sam, I believe you got there about a couple weeks ago. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Sergeant Spaeth, for joining us. I believe this briefing is definitely something we all look forward to. You had a packed house, everyone signed up, so really looking forward to it. All right, Sam, over to you.
All right. Hello, everybody. First off, can you see me? If not, that is all right. Yep. Oh, okay. Yep. Excellent. I will not be doing video too much. I just wanted to kind of show my face at the beginning, the intro here. First off, I definitely wanted to thank those of you who put this together, Senior Master Sergeant Duchesne and Senior Master Sergeant Flig, and the others that have kind of pulled everything together. This is awesome. This is a really cool answer to the national PDI. So just happy to be here and thankful that you managed to get me a 2-hour block. So I will do my best not to Ben Stein it too much. If you find yourself falling asleep, I won't be able to tell this time. So try not to, but if you do find anything, if you're confused on things, I'm used to this being more interactive. So I won't have any issues if there are a few, if you want to kind of pop in your audio interrupt or put something in the chat, I'll keep watching the chat. But other than that, I will kind of press through with my presentation. So introduction was kind of already there. I have been at the RTC for about 2 months now, not too long, still kind of figuring life out, not just as at this level, because it's my first time outside the squadron, but also just pending on Master Sergeant and teleworking all at the same time. So it's been a pretty interesting ordeal altogether. So I am in FMF background, 9 to 10 years or so. I've only done about 10 months of FMA, so my presentation is more so directed toward the FMF side of the house. That's not to devalue anything for FMA. There's definitely some things in here, hopefully, that you'll be able to kind of take away as well. But yeah, that's just kind of a little bit of my background. I definitely work more on the FMF side of the house. So I did want to start with one short video clip. We'll see if this thing works out. And now I will go video dark. So there actually isn't any audio on this one. It's just wind. But I wanted to kind of show this. And again, it's blurry and terrible, so sorry about that. But it's kind of a good take on innovation, right? So you see the biker. He's taking advantage of technology, aerodynamics in this case, to pass up the competition, while the others are sitting there pedaling and working really hard to keep up in the race. He's just chilling. Like, he's got his feet back. He's not doing any work. He's just hanging out. So what he was able to do is take advantage of this opportunity to rest his legs, but also still get ahead of the competition. But there's two things to kind of note in this video. One, that position does not look safe, right? So if you just try to jump in and do this to get ahead without any practice, any setup, any like mental preparation, you will crash and burn. It is just not going to work. Another thing to kind of note is this particular technique's not going to work uphill. It's only going to work in this one little situation because they're downhill. He's able to kind of take advantage and use this particular technique. If he tries this uphill, he's just going to end up going backwards, falling off his bike or whatnot. So kind of tying that into automation, there are a lot of tools. I've put together some tools. I know there are tons of them that are out there, and they almost all of them do great things, but in certain ways. So if you try to use a one method fits all, it's likely not going to work. So try to learn as much as you can and try to find the best ways to apply what you learn in the right ways. This definitely, I'm not going to get too much into data management and all that stuff because I'm not very smart on it, but this definitely ties into data management. If you are working with tables or reports or anything that you're pulling out of stuff, make sure those reports are right. Make sure they're accurate. I've definitely made this mistake in the past, and I probably will continue to, hopefully not to any detriments, but it is definitely something to be aware of and to scrub through to make sure that you are doing everything kind of right.
Hey, Sam, Sergeant Duchesne. I apologize. Looks like some folks are not seeing the slides. I'm not sure if it happened after you turned your video off. It also turned off the slides as well. Could you just give that a test and let's see if those folks can see your slides now?
Okay, great. So it looks like in chat, people are able to kind of see them.
Yep, looks like everyone's come back with no issues now. So, well, I'm sorry, Sergeant Robinson looks like she can't see it.
So I'll unshare and then reshare. We'll see if that works out. If not, the only thing I can maybe recommend is if you pop out and back in, maybe that will work out.
Yeah.
Let me change my share content back to just text and images. That may refresh the presentation. Screen 2, set that. Okay, how about now? Any changes?
Yep, she got it. Good to go.
Awesome. Let me get the chat back up, participants back up. Okay. So
Sweet.
I do have a couple other little optional videos. I'll play those later, but again, those are more so to close everything out. I will go ahead and click to the overview slide. I am not a slide driver. As you already see, there are only 3 slides in my PowerPoint, and 2 of them are the exact same slide. So almost everything I'm about to do over the next hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes or so is strictly within Excel and on my computer, all these files. So that may be good, that may be bad. We'll just kind of see how it presses on and how you guys end up liking it. So the first thing I wanted to start with was some of these tools that I have made. Many of you have already maybe seen them. I post them on the comptroller page. People mention them all the time, but I kind of wanted to highlight them and actually show a few of them and how they work, what you can use them for, and if they'll help you in your particular situation. So the first thing I'll jump into is the debt tracker. And I already have some plans to make a few little updates to this, but this thing is definitely working just fine when applied correctly. So you should see a pretty busy looking spreadsheet here. Setup tab to this debt tracker. So this tool overall, it's used for debt tracking, right? So most people, if not everyone, has a sort of tracker that they use, whether it's a spreadsheet, a list, just a print up of all of their XYs, or however you do it. This is basically here to help provide due process to people when a debt is generated, and then to collect that debt when the time is right. What I've seen so many times in the past, we've made mistakes of or whatnot, is taking too long to send out these debt letters. And then the debts start collecting and people's paychecks get totally deleted. And then there's a whole bunch of work and heartache and headache that goes into kind of going back and fixing those things. So this tool is to kind of help get ahead of that, but it's also to help give a lot more hands off on the process and paperwork itself. So I'll click to the master list here. This is kind of the main tracker that you see. And again, it looks big and busy and a little bit complicated. And it is to a degree, but it's something that you can get used to pretty quickly. So the way you fill this thing in is based off DMO reports. So I actually have a little export here. I also forgot to caveat in the beginning. Everything that you see, every report, every database, anything that you see is scrubbed for PII. So the socials are fake, the names are fake, all of the information, all the pertinent PII information is fake. So don't worry about any FOUO exposures or anything like that. So again, I also have a guide to this thing, but yeah, that's on another note. So what you would do on here is when you first pull up your debt tracker template, you would go to DMO and you would pull your updates, and then you would pull down the XY03 updates. When you pull those down, you can hit an export button that will basically pull them into a notepad that looks similar to this. It actually looks a little bit more messy than this. I had to trim it down a bit for the PII sake, but it's essentially the same thing. It'll just look kind of crazy and a bunch of stuff kind of everywhere. So what you can do with this notepad is you can select everything, copy, and then down here there's an XY03 paste sheet tab, and you can paste it straight over cell A4, this cell right here. If it does not paste in like this, then there is one extra step you have to do, and that involves using the text import wizard. And I'm only going over this because this issue is the most common issue that I get. Whenever somebody's trying to use this tool and they have an issue, this is likely what they're running into. So if you use that text import wizard, you'll select delimited, hit next, uncheck everything except for tab, and then you hit finish. And then that way it'll fill the data in the way that the tool will be able to read it. So you shouldn't have to do that every time, just once. But if it does keep doing it, then that's kind of how you paste it in correctly. So once it's pasted in, there's a little cleanup button up here. When you click that, it's going to cut all the data down into just 4 columns. It'll have the social, It'll have the actual date of the debt so that you can track your 30 days. It'll have the overpayment dates of that debt, and it'll have the amount of the debt itself. So you can just copy this and paste it straight into the white cells over here. So when I paste it in, all of this data, that's how that gets filled in. There is no hand jamming of any kind. It's pulled straight from DMO and put into here. You see there's a bunch of red cells that came up here. That's because this particular tool ties to an alpha roster. Most of my tools do. And I do not have the alpha roster filled in for these socials. So it's going to give you some errors. I kept this in because a lot of new airmen coming from tech school are going to have these errors. Your alpha roster may not have their information yet. So I kind of built in a fix errors button to help with that as well. So when you click this, it'll give you a little form. You fill in that person's information, go and find it, either MMPA or what have you. And then once you fill it in, I'll just fill in randomness for now. It will keep going down and looking for all the errors until they're all complete. It helps with a very large list. Once they're filled in, it actually plugs in the information for you. So I only did the top block just to show you. It doesn't fill in the FID though. So the only thing this tool does not capture off of DJMS for you is the FID itself. So the FID is important because it tells the member why they have a debt. So you do still have to go record by record for now and fill in the FIDs. The other thing is the due process dates. So this is likely just going to be today's date. So you can just fill in 11 June and then paste it all down, etc. But once this stuff is all filled in, it can be carried over to a mail merge, a different Word document, and I won't dig too far into it just for the sake of time, but you can use this document here and it will pull in all of the information and fill everything in line by line and send out emails en masse. A lot of people are already familiar with mail merge, which is why I won't dig into it. If you are not, if you are at a base that does not use mail merge, you are hand jamming your debt letters still, please reach out. If you need training or just need to be pointed in the right direction, I will happily help you. Please do not hand jam your debt letters anymore. So once the mail merge is sent out, then your first piece is done. Your initial piece is done, right? Everybody's gotten their debt letters, and now you're waiting your 30 days to resume their debts. There are two kind of sides of this. It's all depending on the amount. So we ran into this rule back in November that says we can only collect debts at a 15% rate now. No more two-thirds rule. So if the debt is more than 15%, like down here is showing $9,000, then you're going to run into issues where you have to collect it over several months. So there's a monthly collection amount block here with this big old formula, and it basically references an average. So I kind of did a meet in the middle here, and it averages this little table has an average of everyone's salary based on rank across the Air Force. The fun little fact here is that Lieutenant Generals, oh, actually, never mind, it was fixed. Lieutenant Generals used to get paid more than generals, and I thought that was kind of funny. The reason being was because of OHA. So since I trimmed out BAH in this average chart, it's actually giving you a better average number. So it pulls that information. Everything in this sheet, I'll also mention, is overwritable. So I don't lock down formulas. I don't lock down cells. That could be bad. That could be good. Bad in that you might mess up a formula, but good in that if you do want to overwrite something, such as the monthly collection amount, then you can. It's really annoying. At least I've always been annoyed in the past if I get a new spreadsheet and I try to at least look at it or see what's going on with it, and it's all locked down and I can't do it. So I keep my stuff unlocked for that reason. It is yours to mess with, yours to learn, whatever you want to do with that. Anyway, another tangent aside. After this is filled in, based off your due process date, it will tell you when to process a DQ-20. Let's say if the amount is really low, like this is an E2 airman, so if it's $100 here, the action required will change to auto collect. So if the debt amount is less than the monthly payment amount based off of that setup chart, then it basically is telling you don't worry about the DQ-20, just let the system process it itself, generate those XD management notices, what have you. It just helps you not have to do a DQ-20 because it's not extremely important, I suppose. Anything else, if it's a higher amount, it'll again tell you when to process that DQ-20. The benefit of that is when this day comes, July 11th for today, there's trail card data here too. I may get into this if I have some time during this presentation, but if not, again, reach out to me. There is a way to mass upload transactions into DMO without ever having to input. And it's extremely valuable. It helps auditors because they don't have to worry about human error, and it helps inputters because they don't have to input. So usually everybody's happy as long as the data that you're pulling from is accurate. So here these DQ20s do work. So if we were to have a bunch of these lines filled in, it would give you a whole bunch of these trail cards. Copy and paste them, you do your DQ20s. The other thing it does is this blue button up here, click here to update print the 114. When you click it, it'll flash and your printer will spit out a DD114 with a DQ20 on it. If you kind of want to see under the hood, it is a separate sheet in here. So this is what it currently tried to fill in and spit out. I'm on my home computer, so it's not going to print here. But it filled everything in based on that data in that sheet. So kind of neat. You don't have to code your 114s anymore, but you can still have them available as you need to for certification and whatnot. So that's the gist of what this tool does. It tries to help manage everything cradle to grave without you having to hand jam much of anything. I'm still working on the FID piece, but in the meantime, it does pretty good work. If you run into issues with it, of course, reach out to me and I will happily help you personally to get it all set up at your unit. So that's the debt tracker. Moving on, separation retirement tracker. So this is what the separation retirement tracker looks like. I know everyone is going to have a form of separation retirement tracker as well because it is required by regulation. So if you don't have a tracker, you must get one in order to meet the need. But everybody's tracker looks a little different. The interesting bit is that the regulation doesn't dig too far into what is supposed to be in the tracker. It just says that you have to have a tracker. So you have to be able to track this stuff or prove to an auditor or whomever that you are tracking all of the separations and retirements. And again, correct me if I'm wrong on that note. That's just based on the last time I was reading through that reg. But my tracker, I tried to make a little bit different. This is mainly an appeal to those brand new people who absolutely cannot stand filling in trackers. Coming up through the Air Force, I was filling in SG trackers, separation trackers, debt trackers, basically 40 different trackers. It felt like all for, to me, it felt like no reason. It felt like I was just wasting time. I was filling data in, nobody was referencing it. Leadership didn't tend to care about it. That's not to knock any leadership out there, but it kind of just went unlooked at, and it just felt like I was filling a hole in the ground without anybody really caring. So I tried to spice them up in a unique way. The separation retirement tracker specifically does a couple of unique things that I've never seen on another tracker. And it's because I couldn't stand filling in the same data in multiple areas. So kind of doing a walkthrough. If somebody's about to separate, 10 days from now, you have to comp their pay. And then when you get that computation, and the day comes for their separation, you'll go to a DD2424. I'll actually click to the tab. You'll fill all their information into here. You'll type it out like a check, or hopefully you're not handwriting it out, but maybe you're handwriting it out like a check. And then you're making the EFT payment that way. And then 20 days go by, they drop into V status, and oh, there was a $32 residual payment. So now I have to go and fill out a DD117 and make sure everything is right. If I mess up the rank and it's 510 versus 530, then I got 13 different people yelling at me now, and it just becomes a nightmare. So I'm having to scrutinize these 117s and just not liking it at all. So I was sick of doing just those two things. The other thing I was sick of was going to a voucher log, or if I don't have access, asking somebody else to go into the voucher log, pulling the next voucher number and filling in all their information, and then giving me whatever I needed to fill out on my 117. So I found a way to bypass all of that by using this tracker. So all you do is you fill in the information one time, you put in their DOS, and of course you can sort by DOS, so you can see who's coming up next, when do I need to start on that. Some of the typical stuff you would see in a tracker, like their T status date, V status, all those blocks are kind of in there. Some of them are automated or formulated. I cannot say how well they work. So you can overwrite that stuff if it's kind of not saying the right things. But my focus on this tracker was on the buttons at the top. So it's color coded for a reason. When you fill in the DOS and social, the gray again pulls from an alpha roster. So you can pull in a LeafWeb alpha roster and it'll pull in that information. If you don't care about the alpha roster, then by all means, you can fill in the rank and name yourself. What I would caution is the rank must be grade. So I should probably just change that to grade. It has to be E-5, O-1, letter dash number, basically. If it's not put in that format, then the 117 will fill in the wrong information or potentially fill in the wrong information for 510, 530. Everything else is good to go though. So the blue and green blocks are all manual entry as well. The blue block is your T status, excuse me. So when you do their pay comp, you find out what NT amount that you need to pay is or what amount it is that you need to pay, and you plug it in right here. This is all you'll need to print a 2424. So if I click this button, this actually does pull it to PDF for me. It'll print out my 2424 on the printer. Fills in the amounts and everything for me as well. So then 20 days later, 20 days go by, and now I need the 117 because there's a $32 difference. We'll just put it in 32 bucks there because, yeah, that's how it goes. You still have to pull their LH line information. So you need their routing and account number, their bank info, so that it fills in the 117 properly. And you need to put in a release date. So whatever that voucher date will be, usually it's tomorrow's date. It's 1 business day later. But once I fill that in, so let's put 12 June. Yeah, that should do fine, right? Yep. So I'll put in 12 June. So once all the greens are filled in, I can click on print DD117 and it'll do the same thing here. So when I pull this up, now it's got tomorrow's date, it's got my $32, and it's got all of their information all filled in. So again, this helps me prevent not just issues with voucher balancing, errors on the 510, 530 aspect, but also I just don't have to fill in this 117 anymore. And apologies, I skipped a step. The voucher number. So this is actually grayed out for a reason. I tied this thing to our voucher logs as well. You can see the entries and everything up top. So after I fill in all this information here and I click create voucher log entry, it gives me the next voucher number, next available voucher number. So I click open voucher log, you can kind of see, I've done this a couple of times now. This is what my voucher log looked like at Hurlburt Field before I left there. It can be tailored to look like yours, but it takes a little bit of scripting changes, nothing too heavy. But this thing can go and pull your voucher log, fill in all the information, and pull back the next available voucher number within that log without you ever having to open it up. So again, all this stuff is just ways for me to make a payment as quickly as I could without having to tax myself too much and to get it right the first time every time. When I was using this thing back when I first built it, I was able to make a payment within about 3 minutes. There was, I don't know what it was. We had tons of people who just decided to become sundowners. You know, they'd either get kicked out or they would just never visit finance, and we'd find out, you know, a month later that, oh, they separated a while ago. Never knew about that one. And, you know, either the personnel records are messed up, ETS dates are wrong, whatever, what have you. So as soon as I found out about one of those people, we had that open PX that we needed to clear, I could get it paid and finished within about 3 minutes using this tool. So you can get pretty good and fast at it. And it helps, you know, kind of all parties. So leadership is happy because you do have a tracker. They can kind of see what's going on, what work needs to be done. And you're happy because you don't have to fill in all of this stuff 800 different times. So that's kind of what I did for my separate tracker. If you do want to integrate all of these columns and everything over here, these are all fair game. So if you have your own tracker with your own columns that you want to keep, just paste them over this stuff and you can press on. That's basically a separate tracker. Next up, leave recon tool. So this is a recent one that I put out. This helps with Well, leave recon. So if you have issues with your leave reconciliation in LeaveWeb, if it's massive, 1, 2, 3, 4, 18,000 lines, then this little tool should help you at least slam some lines together and get you a quick output. So what it'll do is it pulls a report from Cognos, which is a MilPay database. It's a kind of a background lake of data, if you will, that you can construct custom reports based off of. So I've built one and made it available to whoever has Cognos access. And it's basically a giant report of your base and everyone who has taken leave in the past 2 years. So it'll pull every single SB line over the past 2 years into a single report. Then the other thing you pull is your leave recon report out of LeaveWeb, and you put that into a different tab. And then you click a button and it will compare what's in their MMPA to what is in LeaveWeb and make the corrections as needed. So that's what the tool looks like. There's the 2 tabs there where you just paste the data. There's one correct tab as well. So if the dates line up perfectly, then it will fill in a list here to say, yep, good to reconcile. Their SB is posted properly, you're good to go. And then for the rest of them that were not good, either there was no leave number at all, or it was posted and the dates are wrong, it will give you SB03 coding, that same DMO code, trailer card. It'll give you all of that stuff. If it needs an SB06, it'll do an SB06 and an SB03, and it'll provide all of that to you. So you copy and paste it in the DMO, mass input, and you're good to reconcile all your lines, hopefully same day. So that's just a quick tool. If you are interested in that one as well, same thing, reach out and I can kind of help get you started. This one I've made a video for as well, so I can provide the walkthrough video. It's just a little YouTube link. And finally, premiering what I'm calling AFMIST. So I have created an MIS tool. That's what made me quote unquote famous in the past. Hated doing MIS reports, a little bit of background on it. I worked at Hurlburt Field. I was the LDTA for a year and found out pretty quick that Hurlburt Field is the most deployed wing in the Air Force. Our OCONUS MIS reports were anywhere between 400 and 1,200 lines every week. So it became pretty much impossible to actually manage all of it. I was working every Saturday. I was taking anywhere from 4 to 6 extra hours just to get these MIS things coded and done with. So I kind of I had it one day. I gave up. I took 1 week of leave. This was April 2018. I took 1 week of leave and I spent the entire week kind of training VBA to myself while coding this tool at the same time. Got it to work and I was able to share it a little bit here and there. It is still out there and people have kind of talked about it and asked for it. But the issue is it has a lot of connections. It connects to an Access database. It connects to at least 4 or 6 other Excel spreadsheets. So because of all those external connections, it had a tendency to break. The connections did not want to stick and it was just kind of clunky using. Excellent when it does work, but it was kind of clunky. So since I got to the RTC, actually a little bit beforehand, I kind of enlisted the help of AFFSO. It's the office that runs permissions management and all kinds of other different things. They own an RPA, which is robot. So they can create RPAs for us and have these things do all the work for us, basically. So over the last 6 months or so, been working with them. They got a standard report created, which should be going on SharePoint for all bases within the next week or 2. So at your base, if you manage MIS reports, instead of having to pull them yourself out of DTS, you can instead go to the IMSC SharePoint, pull the reports out of there, and they will already be kind of organized for you. There'll be a load of Cognos reports in there, so you can do some MilPay comparisons straight in the Excel spreadsheet. And let me actually pull this stuff up and show you while I'm talking. Here's an earlier version of what the template will look like. It's not going to be too different, but this is kind of what you'll be able to see in the IMSC SharePoint. So there are these first 4 tabs, which are Cognos reports. It's all pulled straight out of the MilPay database. So this is basically reflecting what is on the member's pay record. There's Cognos leave as well. And then these are the 4 MIS reports pulled straight out of DTS. So they're all consolidated into a single spreadsheet and they're kind of bumped up against this Cognos report as well. So this got us most of the way there. You at least have everything here. You can do all of your coding, all of your typical line-by-line scrubs that you would normally do, but now you don't have to pull the reports out of DTS. A robot is doing that for you already every single week. It'll show up on Monday morning every week, and you'll be able to just go, pull it, work it, and call it done. Something to note, it is on the AFIMSC SharePoint. It is not scrutinized or requested by AFIMSC. So they don't care, that it's not a do out. They don't care to have the report back. But we all know MIS reports are required. So it just gives you that tool set so you don't have to go and pull them and work them yourself. However, this is phase one. Phase two is coming soon. I'm probably about another week or two away from it. I just have to work out some bugs. But I'll show you the actual AFMIST side of it. It's going to run a gigantic script at Air Force level. Again, this isn't a script that you will have to run or that you will have to see, and it will go through and basically code about 90% of this report for you. So this is the template. This is the AFMIST tool. And what I have here, it's on a different monitor, but I'll kind of pull it over so you can see it. I have VBA script, so a gigantic VBA scripting program that will run through all of these tabs and code and work all of the reports for you. So let's see what it looks like. As of now, it takes about a minute. Again, this is something you're not going to have to really worry about. When you receive the reports after this is all done being run, you will basically see these reports after this is run. This is what it will look like when you get it. So what it's doing now is it's going through the BAS tab. It's pulling everybody who either should have not been receiving meal deductions, who were, or basically all the meal deductions people. So it's going to compare them to their TDY records. If they were still receiving meal deductions, then it's going to code a PI03. The PI03 will help refund all their meals and basically get them reimbursed that way. There are going to be a couple little quirks with it where it may reject for overlapping or whatnot, but the goal is for all of the rejects to be whitelisted at a higher level and not to require any action. So if there are any rejects that require action, we will continue to work that on our end to get rid of them entirely. So this thing should be able to work the PIs for you, or the BAS for you. On the FSA report, it creates an email, which I can actually pull over and show you, hopefully. Yeah, I can show it there. It creates an email. So it will find everybody in that FSA report. It'll see what their dependency status is, if they're married, if they have kids, if they're mill-to-mill, what have you. And if there's a match, it will add them to a BCC list with this standard email. And sorry, I can't expand it right now because it's still working. And this email will basically just pop up in front of your face, ready to click send. You can change your from, so you can say it's from an org box if you'd like, or whatnot. That's kind of why I keep it displayed. And also, if you end up having to run this piece of the script multiple times, you're not just spam emailing people. Now, I had just said that the script will be run at the Air Force level. The FSA piece is not something that they're interested in doing, which I totally understand. We were going to think about sending a mass FSA email from just a dead org box to give people their notification. But what we would probably get is a whole lot of reply backs with their FSA forms, and then it would go to nobody, nowhere. So instead, we kind of made the decision that the base will still send out the FSA email. That way you guys can specify where to send it back, or how to get that piece worked. But that's the FSA notification bit. Now it's still running through, so that's where some of the concern is coming up. Oh, good, there it goes. So it's taking a couple of minutes right now. I haven't optimized it yet, and not all the bugs are worked out. But this is what the report looks like on the end. So the BAS report adds 2 columns, one for annotations to tell you if the PI03 was coded, who did it. Right now I just have AI in there. I'll probably just add something like RPA, and then when it was done. This is meeting AFAFO policy that we have to annotate all our reports line by line. So this meets their policy, they're happy, and then we have the DMO code, which will make us happy, where you can just grab and copy all of this straight into a notepad, upload it into DMO, and you're good to go. FSA, still working on the marital status right now. That's a bug. But the annotation, it's going to say email drafted and sent, and that's what that email pop-up will be. The leave tab, I'm going to skip over a little bit. There's annotations in here that say leave work, move to leave web. If you haven't noticed it yet, within leave web, I can't pull it up because there's PII. Within leave web, there is a new TDY module that actually pulls the leave MIS report already and creates a work list for you. So if you're going in there and you're actually going through that TDY work list, you're already working your leave MIS reports. There's no need to pull and work them a second time. I haven't really heard any of that information go out to the bases, so that's something that will probably work at our level and with AFGSC to push that info out so that everybody's actually aware of that little module in leave web. Then the OCONUS report, this is the trickiest one because of all the moving parts. It will go through, again, line by line. It'll annotate what needed to be coded, HTTP, IDP, or whatnot. This one actually does annotate RPA. And it will provide the DMO code. This thing will look at if the HTTP is currently open on their record. Sorry, all the entitlements are open on their record. It will close and correct if it has to. It will not do anything if it doesn't, or it will just report if it doesn't find anything at all. If there's no entitlement, it'll specify that. And it's pulling everything based off of location, city, and state. I have a hidden database in here. It's actually built into the code that references all of the regulation locations, and this thing can read that and tell us if the person is entitled and everything like that. It does track HDP cumulative days. So let's say if they were 27 days in Afghanistan and then they went immediately to Iraq for 5 days, it will be able to tell that, okay, because they were still in the zone for those 32 days, they are indeed entitled to HDP, and it will pay for the location that they were at the longest. So it can track all of that stuff and everything. Again, it's not perfect yet. That's why we're going to work through some bugs. I'll probably get a Tiger team together just to make sure I'm not the only one looking at this stuff to make sure that it's correct. And it will be sent out to you, everyone, here soon. So ideally, end of the day, all of this stuff will be taken care of for you, and all you have to do is upload it in a DMO and call it a day. There is one manual work tab though. So it did add a chunk of lines from this report to a manual work tab. And this actually might be copies, I'm not sure. But in some cases, it's not gonna find the full social based off of the reports that are being scrutinized through by AFFSO. And other times with the OCONUS report, I found that not all of the dates are actually being pulled in the OCONUS report. So let's say it'll say that they were at one base from 24, or one location from 24 to 27 October. And then the next location, it was like 5 to 11 November. And nobody knows what happened with 28 October through 4 November. So because that doesn't exist on the report, I have a poll over here to say, okay, you may need to pull the GTS voucher and actually look at where they were during those dates and code accordingly. But what it does try to do is at least code what it can. So there will still be some DMO code in there. It will try to get as far along as it can and at least help you out with that bit. So that is AFMIST. That's what we're hoping will be out here very soon. Once it gets through all the powers that be, it will be blessed through AFAFO. So there may be a policy that comes with it. So kind of all of leadership will be involved in getting this tool out into your hands so that it meets the need and it meets audit as well. If you do have any suggestions, feedback, concerns, anything like that over this tool, by all means, my inbox is open. So you can contact me, especially once you get your hands on it and you get to start kind of utilizing it. All right, that piece is AFMIST. So that was about 40 minutes of me kind of showing tools. This whole thing was also supposed to be training, so that's why I am happy to have gotten 2 hours instead of just 1. So I kind of want to go through basics. I mean, you can see the slide there as well. Basics, pivot tables, formulas, and then if we have time, some of that fun under the hood coding type of stuff. For anyone who is still interested after this session, you want to know more, once again, reach out. I would love to chat about this type of stuff and talk about just kind of what the capabilities are. So with that said, I don't know if everybody actually did get a file package on this. If you did receive files, then go ahead and open up the spreadsheet. The file packet probably had like a little Word guide. It had this 3-slide slideshow, and then it had a Excel workbook, which looks like this. So most of what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be kind of walking through each thing. Feel free to follow along if you would like. You do not have to, but the more interaction you do here, then the more familiar you will be with some of these Excel concepts that I'm going to kind of talk you through. So to start, some Excel basics. And sorry, I'm kind of pulling guides over here so I can refer to this stuff. And I think I'll do this a little bit different. So we're going to start. I want to actually put it, I guess I could have just done a slide, huh? So I want to put it visually so you can kind of see what I'm going to go through. We'll just kind of paste it as a screenshot here straight into Excel. So I'm just going to scroll down on my social disclaimer tab here, which again, you can read through that stuff later. It goes into the how I got the fake data that I got. But we're going to start with the basics. Now, I like to start as simple as possible. I don't think this is as simple as possible. It might be another step up, but the problem with teaching people Excel is everybody's at a different level of knowledge. If I start at the basics of the basics, like this is the home tab, and this is a clipboard and how to copy and paste to a clipboard. You know, if I go through that element by element, first of all, you'll fall asleep. Second of all, you may be insulted. I might be just insulting your intelligence at that point and wasting time. However, some of you may actually find that very useful and beneficial. So I kind of have to find this way to meet in the middle. So this is where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with the control key. So on your keyboard, you have in that bottom left-hand corner, a control key, a shift key, a Windows key, and an alt key. All 4 of those keys are pretty cool. They do some pretty cool things. Control is going to be the most used one here in Excel, but they tend to work across multiple Microsoft platforms. So it's pretty cool and useful stuff. But anyway, starting at the beginning, we'll do Control C, V, and X. So let's say I got a cell with some data in here. Control C will copy, right, and paste for Control V, so you can copy and move stuff around. Control X is cut. So if I hit Control X and I paste, it'll move it. Within Excel, it'll do sometimes some weird things with formatting, but that is your way of moving stuff instead of just copying and pasting. Moving down, you have the other standard stuff that we probably all know already. Control S saves, Control P prints, Control F finds, and Control H finds and replaces. That's potentially a new one that you might know about. So if you hit Control H, it'll just bring up that find and replace. Of course, you can just go and do your replace up here. It might be in a bunch of other places, but Control H is an easy way to kind of get find and replace up. Or if you hit Control F, it'll bring up your find, and then there's just a tab up there for replace. So find and replace is really useful. You can use it. You can do it within a selection. You can do it within a sheet. You can do it within the entire workbook. You can do all kinds of easy replacement things there. Control A, select all. So I'm going to actually click over to one of these tables now, just on this BAQ tab. So within this table, if I hit Control A, it'll select all of the data within that table. Notice if I scroll over, it actually stops where the data stops. That goes the same at the very bottom. If I hit Control A again, it'll grab everything. It's going to grab the entire Excel spreadsheet. So it's just an easy way to kind of navigate around if you want to select a whole table and move it to another tab or what have you. The other one is Control arrow keys. So if you see me clicking around, moving around, a lot of people get psyched out whenever I'm navigating spreadsheets because of how quickly I do so. The Control key, again, is my navigation key for the most part. So if I hit Control down arrow right here, it's going to bring me straight to the very bottom of this list. If I hit Control right from here, it's going to take me to the first cell that basically has data after one that's blank. Kind of a weird way of saying it, but if you have any columns with blank cells in it, it's going to skip over just that one and take you to the next one. If I hit it again, then it will take me to the end of the data, or again, to the next blank space. There's some other ones in here that I didn't really mention in that little guide, but Control Home will take you to the very top left of the table, more than likely cell A1. Control End will take you to the very bottom right. Oop, if I don't hit the page keys here. Control End will take you to the very bottom right. So again, just an easy way to navigate. Now your Shift key, I'll kind of change gears. Your Shift key helps highlight. So if I hit Shift and I start pressing Up key, it's going to start highlighting those cells. And then if I keep holding Shift and I press Left, it's going to grab, that type of stuff. I can also click. So if I keep holding Shift, I can just click and it will, again, from that initial cell it was in, it will select everything along those lines. If I combine them, Control Shift, I can grab the entire column. While holding Control Shift, I can hit right and it'll grab everything over to where the data stops. So again, just an easy way to grab multiple columns, bits of data, things like that. Control Page Up, Page Down. I actually hit that by mistake just now, and it's funny because I figured it out by hitting it by mistake months ago. If you hold Control and press Page Up and Page Down, it will navigate through the tabs of your spreadsheet. I use this mainly back when I was working QA. I had metrics on a different tab, and sometimes the selection thing was just in a random spot. And I wanted to bring it to the top. Maybe it's just OCD or whatnot. But I wanted to have every sheet when I click on it to show the very top of my sheet. So if I hold Control and I hit Home, it'll bring me to the top. Then Page Down, Home, Page Down, Home, and so on and so forth. So I could get to cell A1 on all of my sheets. So I'd just be at the top right, keep it a little bit clean. Use it if you want. You don't have to though. Back to this first tab, Control semicolon. It's the one right next to your L key. If you press that, it will give you today's date. If you Control Shift semicolon, it'll give you the current time. So I'm currently on CST, so it's 1:52 p.m. I've been using this for my notes. Of course, being the Excel nerd that I am, I actually take all of my notes, all of my RTC notes so far since I've gotten in this seat have been in a single giant Excel workbook. And I'll actually show that to you guys in a little bit. But again, kind of helps with that date and time stamp, especially if you don't really know what today is. Helps me out a ton because I've been losing track through all this teleworking and COVID and all of this stuff. It's been fun. And then control question marks. That's what I have here. There's so many more things that holding Control and pressing a button does. So just try it out. Use your keyboard, figure out what each button does. There's also another one I didn't put in here was bold, italics, underline. So BIU can change the formatting of your data pretty quickly. That works well in Microsoft Word. But again, there's just so many different applications you can use for just these shortcuts, these keyboard shortcuts. And the more you practice them, the better you'll get, and the faster you'll be able to kind of navigate around these spreadsheets and make them do what you want. Because I know it can get frustrating if you're just like stuck in a cell and you're trying to move and it just doesn't work out. One last little tip, if anybody's kind of had that issue where they're not pressing or holding anything on their keyboard, but when they go to click somewhere, it starts highlighting all these cells, and no matter what you try to do, it doesn't really it doesn't stop. If you do run into that issue, you hit the F8 key. So somehow I got it to actually fix there. So if it's doing that, just hit F8. That means you mistakenly hit the F8 key. I don't know why that key exists or why that feature exists, but yeah, just hit F8 and you'll be good to go. And that's the same thing. Just check the F keys, see what those do, and then I could go on. Moving on to some features. There's a few features that I'm going to highlight. There's many, many, many more that Excel actually does do. And honestly, if you just go through each of these tabs and you click, you can actually just same thing, just play around with what these buttons do and figure out what they actually do. There's still some things in here that I haven't learned or looked at or done. But the more you look at, the more familiar you'll get with just various Excel things. But what I'm going to highlight now is conditional formatting. Conditional formatting is pretty useful for a lot of people. It helped me out a ton as QA. Again, you could see if a metric was red or green pretty quickly, just based on data that you pulled straight into it. But I'm trying to think, I had something lined up for this. is mainly through the scenario stuff, but that's all right. I'll do it based on the socials here in this list because I got some blank cells here. So I want to change I want to change the color of these cells based on the data that's in these cells. It's pretty easy to conditional format within these cells. So like, let's say I want to grab these socials here. I'm going to hit conditional formatting. And then there's all these neat little rules. So you can highlight cells based on what they're greater than or equal to. You can do color scales. So from top to bottom, the lowest number may be red and the highest may be green. So if I just click that, it'll make my lowest numbers red. So all the socials that don't have anything in the front are now red. And then it'll kind of give me a yellow to green gradient based on what's in that column. So you can have it do that. You can also just make it straight up change a color based on its value if you wanted to do that as well. But what I want to do, and something a little more common, but a lot of people tend to struggle with, is how do I color these cells based on what's in these cells? I can change these cells based on what's in these cells pretty easily using that same conditional formatting rule. But I want to highlight this if this is something. So I'm going to use just the basic rule. If it's below this 900 million number, then it will color red. And if it's above the 900 million number, it'll color green. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click New Rule. And then I'm going to use a formula. And again, there could be multiple ways to do this. This is the easiest way I've been able to do it. In this block, if I hit equals, and then I click on the cell next to whichever one I'm selecting, B2 in this case, and then I'm going to hit equals again. Sorry, I'm not going to use equals because I'm going to be using a greater than or less than, right? So instead of equals, I'm going to put less than 900 million. And then in here, I'm going to put format. And I'm going to fill it and make it green. We'll just make the cell green if it's less. And I hit OK. And there you go. Now this cell will change green. Now I want to make this apply to the whole column though. So a couple of things I have to do. One, I can click back up to conditional formatting and manage rules. And it says, what does this apply to? So I can change this to the entire column if I want to. So if I just backspace that out, I can click on the column here. And then now I can click apply. And there you go. But a problem I've run into now is it's coloring every cell now. I said if it's less than 900 million, not to color it green, but it's coloring it green. So something else that I need to do is back in this formula, I need to get rid of my dollar signs. So in Excel, dollar sign means anchor. If there's a dollar sign in front of a block, which it does by default, every time that I move this formula around, it will continue to read B2. So because B2 is in here, every one of these blocks is coloring just because of what is in B2. If I get rid of my dollar signs and just say B2, no dollar signs, and hit OK, now it's going to dynamically change. So when I click apply, now you see it's only coloring what's above 900 million. I don't know why that one didn't though. Sometimes conditional formatting can be if the cell is offset by 1 or whatnot, but that's kind of your way of doing it. So you can format cells. Again, you can add multiple rules and do all kinds of neat stuff with conditional formatting. Data validation. So the next one, I'm going to create a drop-down list. So let me just color the cell like gray, just so I can see. That didn't work. There we go. This cell gray, I'm going to stretch it out here. I want to make a drop-down in here. So I could put this into a table to say, maybe I want to see all the list of ranks. And when I click on a certain rank, it does something, you know, whatever you can kind of think of here. But I want to put a list in here. So I click on the data tab up here, click on data validation here. You can just click this big button up here. And by default, every single cell in Excel allows any value, of course. You can fill whatever you want into there. What I want to do is put in a list though. And same thing, there's multiple things in here. So let's say I only want whole numbers in there. So if you try to put text, it won't let you. It'll only let you put in whole numbers. But I want a list. So source, I can do this one of two ways. I can either grab a source. So I can say based on what's in these cells, create a list. A lot of people do this and then they just simply hide the column. So you don't really know where the data is or you can't access it very easily, but it's all referenced and can kind of be changed pretty easily. Another way of doing it is to literally just type in your list. So I could put, let's say ranks. So I can put Airman Basic, Airman, A1C, Senior Airman, Staff Sergeant, and so on. And all you do is you separate it by comma. You don't have to put spaces. You can if you want. You don't have to put spaces. But as long as commas are separating them, you can hit OK. And now it's giving me that drop down based off of the data I just put into that box. So this data doesn't have to actually be anywhere on the spreadsheet in order to reference it. You can just stick it straight into that, that box there and you're good to go. And same thing if I try to say anything else, it's not going to let me. So that's how you can do data validation. I used it mostly for people signing in. So if we had a sign in, I used an Access database for a while there. Somebody comes in, they go to sign in, and I want to see their reason for visit. So there's a drop down for their reason for visit. So if they try to type in something else, maybe it annoys them and it does that. Maybe it just lets them plug it in. You can kind of decide that if you want. But that's kind of where drop downs became useful. The other thing too is, again, standardizing ranks. If I want to code something else based on what their rank is, such as for those 117s, I can use a drop down like this. Flash fill. This one is one of the magic ones. I kind of panicked, not really panicked, but I got pretty excited when I found out about this one. Let me clear all my conditional formatting. So in here, I have a member name header, but I have nothing in here. I have last name, first name, and middle initial here, and I'm trying to get their full name into this cell. Couple ways to do it. If you are smart with formulas, you can use a formula, equals that and that. You would add spaces and things like that, and then you could do it that way. But I don't want to use formulas. I don't want to have to remember how to use the formula. I don't want to have to remember all those nuances or go and find my cheat sheet where it's at. I just want the name in here now. Well, flash fill is your answer. If you literally just start typing what you want, so I want last name, comma, first name, space, middle initial. I'm going to type in RHEBA, comma, Amber M. And that's it. If I try it again, as soon as I type H, Excel figures it out. It says, okay, so what you're typing in here, I can pull this information from somewhere else in this sheet. I see what you're trying to do here, and I'm going to help out. As soon as I type in H, it says, this is what I believe you're trying to actually fill in. And so if I hit enter, I'm done. There's no formulas, no nothing. Everything is just nice and flash filled for me. It keeps the formatting the same. So since I put a comma and then a space, it will comma and then space. If I need it to be a different one, you can add whatever you want in between. You can add 3 hyphens, you can add a Q, you can do whatever you want. As long as it's standard, Excel will try to figure it out for you. Some other things, if you want to, let's say, grab the last 4 of a social, you can do the same thing. So it doesn't have to be complete data. So I only want the last 4, so I'll put 5820, 7608. And you notice it didn't do it this time. It didn't try to suggest. That's because I already cleared it out. I basically told it, no, that's not what I was looking for. I'm looking for this. And now it's like, okay, I'm not going to try and figure out for you now. No, it's not, you don't want me to help, I'm not going to help. So the way you can do it, under Data tab, it's this flash fill button. Shortcut to it is Control E. So if I just press Control E, there it goes. Filled in the last 4 of all the socials based on what it found over here. I've used it for a lot of various reasons. My most common reason, I think, is when I'm trying to pull a list of first sergeants, we'll refer to the dependency discrepancies. However you manage those, I'm sure some people rolled their eyes when I said that. When you're working your dependency discrepancies, what we did at Hurlburt was we would notify the member. A week later, we would notify the member again. Another week later, we would notify the member's first sergeant. So we were involving members' first sergeants in all of our notifications. But it's really annoying trying to pull a list of X amount of people and then manually going and finding all their first sergeants. So instead what I did was I pulled a first sergeant's list. Usually it's in your global. If you just pull it, type in your base first sergeants or whatever that distro is, if you can find that distro with all the shirts in it, you can get all their email addresses. And I apologize because I don't think I really have a good, I can kind of do it this way. You can pull all their email addresses from the distro, and you can literally copy and paste it straight out of Outlook and straight into Excel, and it'll provide kind of a weird list. It takes a little bit of manipulation, but you can basically get a list that looks like this. The problem is it shows everything. It shows their name. It shows, you know, what you see in the global, basically. It would be like Smith, comma, John, E, you know, Staff Sergeant, USAF, you know, AFGSC, all that random stuff. But what it's also going to tell you is their unit. So if I was able to pull all of that information, kind of wish I left my Outlook thing open so I could use it that way. But from that information, you can literally just start typing in their units. Again, just another column off to the side of it. You start typing in their unit, and then Excel will try to figure it out. And then bam, I have a list of all the first sergeant's email addresses and what units they belong to. And I can just tie that stuff together and, you know, harass the first sergeants, if you will. There are likely other reasons for it. The other main reason is what I just did. If I need to get a name in a specific way, so compare some reports, that's a way of doing it as well. So let's do that again here. Reba, Amber M. Oh, you see that? It gave me some weirdness here. So again, because I kept changing it up, it's not quite figuring out what it wants me to get. So I'll do the same thing. After about 2 of them, should get it nice and figured out. So this report's nice filled in. That's what flash fill looks like. Freeze panes, this is another quick and easy one. If you're scrolling down a long report and you're working down it and you forget what the headers are, it can get kind of annoying to keep scrolling to the top. So just click View, Freeze panes here, and then freeze top row. You can mess with freeze panes as well. That will freeze based on where your current selection is. But top row is what I use the most, and that way when I scroll down, it keeps the headers at the top for me. Again, very useful tool for navigation. Also nice because you can just click up here, hit the down arrow, and it'll take you to the top. Also, I got a hot mic. Whoever's, check your mics and just make sure that you're muted. So that's what freeze panes is. Quick and simple. The next thing I want to look at is pivot tables. But yeah, I'll go ahead and press on. I was going to do a break, but I am recording this. So if anybody does want to take a break throughout, by all means, go ahead and take a break, wander off, do your thing, and then pop back. We're all adults, so you can figure it out, talk to your team or whatnot. But we'll press on so you can watch the recording later. So pivot tables, there are many of you within this chat or within this presentation that know what pivot tables are and that use pivot or have used pivot tables in the past. For those FMA people, I'm sure you absolutely know what they are. You use them all the time to check your status of funds and do all that good stuff, maybe help out your RAs, pull pivot tables in for them, update things, all that good stuff. But they're not really looked at or referred to at all on the FMA or FMF side, right? I guarantee those of you who have only been in FMF, you have no idea what a pivot table is unless you found out in your own time personally. So I want to kind of pose to you a good reason to learn and use pivot tables. And that's PCS entitlements. That's something that I'll refer to. So when you process an SG for somebody, you wait a day, right? The SG posts, you're gonna go and then look at their SG line first to make sure that it posted, didn't reject, and that it was in balance. So you got your indicator too. But then after that, you're probably going to check a bunch of other things, right? You want to make sure their BAH is started, their BAS is started, that their status is correct, that FSA is or is not running based on where you are, all that stuff. You're going to be pulling all kinds of entitlement checks just to make sure their record is straight and good to go. Now, realistically, there may be some bases out there. I know we didn't do it for a while. You just don't have the time. So you just hope and pray that maybe their entitlements were right. And if they come in upset later, then you fix it at that time. Not the right answer, but I do understand some bases are really busy and you either forget, you can't get around to it, or what have you. So here, pivot tables are a good way to actually kind of solve that problem. So I have a BAQ report here. I actually have a DN pivot. I don't think I have the original data though. Oh no, I do. It is this. Yeah. So I have what here is basically a Cognos report. That's what this format is. So it's a custom report that I pulled out of Cognos that shows everybody attached to AF base, everybody attached to this fake base, and what their current open meal deductions are. So as soon as I pull the report, I can see immediately everybody who is receiving meal deductions. I can also pull anything I want, what's their status, their 35-line status. So if I see that they are an A and they're getting meal deductions, I probably need to look at that again, especially if the pay grade is E7, you can see that pretty quickly with this report. But I don't want to have to trim down, filter down, and get this report the way I want to look at this report every single time that I am pulling it. That's where pivot tables come in. So just like you would with a status of funds pull, you can pull in this new Cognos report every day, overwrite all of this data, and then click to your DN pivot and hit refresh. And it will refresh to show something along these lines. You can build it however you want, and I'll show you how to build it here in a second. But you can see, okay, here's the social, here's the name, here's what their current BAQ quarter assignment code is. So our 2s, which means that they should be off base. And then if they have open meal deductions, it's looking for open meal deductions. So this is a huge list of people that probably should not be getting meal deductions. So right off the bat, I can see this list. This is my new to-do list to kind of work through and get squared away. And then if you want to go one step further, you can figure out the DMO code for it, have it auto do DNO2s if you want, and then slap that on the end here as a formulated column. And again, you can just have the list work itself. And yes, we are working. Once this MIS thing is done, I will begin work on doing something similar to this for multiple entitlement checks. So it'll help do QE's job for them. But that's kind of the power of pivot tables. So I have a DN pivot. Let's say I wanted, and again, I don't have the data here available, but let's say I had the SG indicator here. I could make another tab. I could name it SG pivot. And same thing, I could just make multiple pivot tables. So I pull the data in once, I click on data, refresh all up at the top, and all of my pivot tables update to tell me what is left over, what needs to be done. I could go another step farther, and in another tab, give a nice little table of how many DNs do I need to do? How many SGs do I need to fix? All that good stuff. So you can get a nice little snapshot overview of what's going on. So let's say I do have the SG though. So in this SG pivot, I'm going to fill in some information. I'll actually delete this tab and do it based on the data. So in this BAQ tab, I'm going to click Insert, Pivot Table. It automatically is going to try to grab all the data that it sees. You can just kind of look at it, make sure it is actually grabbing every row and column that you want. And then I'm just going to hit OK for now. And it's going to open up a new sheet. Same thing, I can now rename this sheet if I want to. But it'll just give me this little box and I'll have all these fields off to the side. So the first thing I want to do is I want to change the way this pivot table looks. If I right click on it and hit pivot table options, and then I'll click on display. And I want it to be a classic layout. This will just help prevent confusion as you're adding fields. Later on, if you uncheck this box, it'll actually clean it up, make look a little bit more modern, and it'll still keep your data in the right place. But for now, I'll just hit classic pivot table. And so now I can do this a couple of ways. First, I want their social because I want to be able to refer to that data. And I'm going to pull it into the row fields here. Another way you can do it is if you just click and drag it over here on the right, or sometimes it'll try to figure out the best approach if you just click the little box, but not always, because it tries to fill it into values by default since everything is a number. So I'm just going to click and drag it down to rows. I also want the member's name, so I'm going to click and drag that down into rows as well. And you see it kind of tries to subtotal everything and it kind of double spaces everything. So it does take a little bit of playing around with. Let's see if I can actually figure it out this time. Yep, no problem. So if I right click and I just uncheck the subtotal box here, then it'll add everything to one line. So now I got their social and their name. So some other things, you can pull in maybe their status if you want to see if they're on station. And again, it'll keep trying to subtotal everything. Get rid of your subtotal. And onward and onward. Something else you can do is, let's say if I click and drag member status to the front, what it's going to do now is it's going to separate them based on status. So let's say everybody was not on station. Let's say we had some suspended people, some confined people, all that stuff. You can kind of separate based on what their current status is if you need to do that. And same goes for any other code. So let's say I pull in their dependent code. So I'm going to pull that in, and it'll give me the codes. So same thing, I can drag this thing to the front, and now I can show, let's drag this back to the back. This is everybody who has code A, and then this is everybody who has code C. So you can kind of organize it the way you want based on what you're doing. So meal deductions, I have their status, and now meal deductions, I'll go ahead and pull that into the row as well. And in fact, I'm probably not going to use values at all. Let's just pull it into values to see what happens. Yeah, it counts if they have them or not. We want to see the dates though. And so there you go, there are start dates. And just like any other regular table, now I can click this and just filter out my blanks. Clean up my subtotals a little bit. And now here you go. These are all the people who are currently married with DNs. And then we got people with children. Was it mill to mill, and they're paying child support, or if they're just straight single. So in the single people, you can just wrap up and say, okay, I can scrub through this list if I got some time, but I can go ahead and assume right now, perhaps they're good to go. However, that's why I have the quarters assignment as well. So if you check their quarters assignment, that's going to be a better code to use rather than dependency status, because maybe they are married and in the dorms. Maybe their spouse isn't here yet, and their first sergeant decided, yeah, you're not quite ready to live off base since you're not deciding to bring your spouse here, or what have you. So you can't rely specifically on dependency code. BAQ quarters assigned is a pretty useful little tidbit of data, because that tells you, yes, they are in the dorms, period. So that's kind of a pivot table, a gist of it. So kind of think of your own ideas if you want. The coolest part about pivot tables is that they stick around when you replace the data. That's why FMA likes to use them, so that you don't have to go and keep trimming it down the way you want to. So next up, Excel formulas. This is a very, very broad topic. In the guide that I sent out, I actually recommend that you look through it because it includes index match. And I am not going to go through index match today. I will go through VLOOKUP though. Basically meets the same need, but a VLOOKUP is a lot less complicated, and it will more than likely do what you need it to do. Sorry, just pulling in the little data here. It'll likely do what you need it to do. And I'll kind of tell you the difference between the two, why I prefer index match, despite it being more complicated. So you asked, how can we get a copy of the guide? I sent it out. I don't know if the PDI is having a central repository or whatnot, but what I can do is I'll stick it in a few places. I'm going to put it on my Fix page. So if you go to the RTC Fix SharePoint, you can find it in a Dropbox there after this session. I'll also just slam it out on the USAF Comptroller's page, because why not? I'm spammy enough there. So if you have a Facebook account, you'll be able to pull the files from there after this. And if there is a PDI repository somewhere, then I'll get in touch with the folks there and we'll get it pushed out that way. Good question. So moving into formulas. The problem with formulas is that it's such a broad topic. I kind of ask myself, what formulas do I even go through? If you click this little f of x, this little function button up here, it'll actually give you a list of all the formulas. It starts with most recently used, but if you just click this down to all, here is every single formula within Excel. And you notice that little box is not moving. There are probably thousands, if not about 1,000 of these formulas. Some of them may be outdated, some of them may be completely arbitrary and insane, and you would never have to use them. But there are a good number of formulas in here that are pretty useful. So I'll just kind of touch on a few of them. First, I'll go over the general context of what a formula is and how Excel reads them. So formulas, you notice the one thing that they share are these little equals keys. So as soon as you put in equals, Excel immediately interprets that as formula. So as soon as I put equals, and I try to start typing anything, so if I just put in randomness and I hit enter, it's going to give me a name error. It's going to give me an issue because it's trying to read this as a formula now, and this is gibberish. It doesn't mean anything. So a way you can kind of still put in text if you want to use equals key, and kind of go in some reasons why you would want to, is right here with quotes. So if I put equals and then I put in a quote and then I put in my gibberish end quote, then it's going to allow me to keep my text. Because what I'm telling it is I want you to display the text of this info. If I put equals and I type in a cell reference, let's say, where am I, D91 right now? If I type in E91, then it puts a little box over it. So it says, okay, I want this cell to equal what's in this cell. That's pretty basic. I think a lot of people have used it before. And it gives me nothing, or there's nothing in there, so it's going to give me a 0. You can change kind of the way the format works, but it will just stick with that. So now if I put anything into this cell, it's going to copy it over. But what's interesting is the way it's reading this cell is the same way, I won't get rid of that, is the same way it's reading this. It's actually it's putting it in quotes internally, and it's reading it as if it's in quotes, called a string. If you know anything about programming, it's a string value. So it stores the text as a string. So that's important to know because I can say, equals, and then I can click on this. If I click on another thing, it will just move that around. But what if I want this cell to have both things in there? If I had an ampersand, that's your shift 7, and then I click, and now it's going to combine the two. So it's going to say it's this and then this. So if I hit enter, it's actually going to give me a really crazy number format because of the way dates and times are read. But that's kind of the gist of it. I don't want it to show that, though. I want it to show the correct stuff, right? So a couple of ways of doing that. I don't know. Yeah, I'll go ahead and do it. So let's say at first, it's going to do equals this. So it does fill that in right, and it does fill that in right. Let's say we fill this stuff in just as text. So it's going to convert it back to number. So bear with me. We'll put 11 June 2020. And you see it's already starting to fill it in now. So we're at 2:23 p.m. and there you go. So that's kind of a way to do it. Formatting is definitely important. If you have something in as a general format, it's going to do its best to read it in the best way that it can, but dates turn into numbers. And you've probably seen that a lot when you're filling in dates in spreadsheets, and it gives you that 434, yada, yada, yada. So that's something to look out for. Should actually add that as a formula here because there's a way to do it. But the problem here is that these two things are jammed together. The same thing I was doing with names is I want these things to be spaced out. So in here, I can use this same concept of the quotes to add a space. And you kind of see an example already with hello world. So if I put quote, space, quote, and then another and, now it's going to space it out for me. And the cool thing is within those quotes, again, you can put whatever you want. And the time is, and it will fill in all of that text for you. So if I have, again, I'm referencing multiple cells, I could drag this down and it would carry that format down. You see it's slowly moving it down cell by cell away from here. So it's kind of cool. You can kind of make your own little standard annotations, notes, or what have you. Today is a pretty simple one, equals today. You see I have FMF today. I'll show that in a little bit. and you just do an open and close parentheses, and it'll put in today's date. Same sort of deal. There's another one that's actually, it's just now. It'll put in today's date. Got to do open close parentheses. It'll put in today's date and time. Same thing that I had just done. So there's a couple little formulas there. Left, right, and mid is pretty useful as well. So let's say I only need, for DJMS input purposes, the first 5 letters of somebody's last name, because that's all you need in order to input into the person's MMPA. That's the only thing that DMO is using for trail card to match what the person's name in the MMPA is showing. So I have their member's full name here already. I went ahead and filled that bit in earlier. I'm going to right click and insert a column here. And I only need the first 5 of last name. Now I could just do the same thing more than likely. Just do my flash fill, type in what I want, and have it work out that way. But maybe it needs to be more dynamic than that. Maybe I need to keep the formulas, so when I replace the names, the formula stays the same, or it updates. So in order to get that, I could just do left equals left, and then it actually helps me out to fill this formula in. The first thing it's looking for is text. So the text I want is in this block here. So if I click on that, and then I hit comma, you'll see the bold moved from text now to number of characters. Now it wants to know how much of that do we want. So we're starting from the left side, and we want 5 characters. So C2, 5, I hit enter, and it gives me just those 5. This little box here, I can drag it down, and it'll actually continue my formula down, and it'll continue to reference what's over here. But you may notice there's a problem, right? Because there was a comma in here, it's not going to quite work out. We want it to show exactly what's on the MMPA. So in here, Ralph ZJ should be JAE space R, right? Because those are the 5 characters. So another way of doing this is, let's use these instead. So I'm going to do left, this, 5, and that'll give me the last name. But now, so let's say we'll drag it down. So now we have at least the last name, but the problem is we're still missing the first name, and we need it to be dynamic, right? So again, we only need 5 characters. Oh, we can just combine them, right? So let's see, we'll do it in J here. Let me delete these out so I know where I'm at. So E15 has J, but I need more than just that. So I can put my ampersand. I need a space, right, after their last name. Let's put in another ampersand, and then we're going to go to their first name, because that's the next thing it'll move on to. So it's still saying left, and the text that I want is multiple cell references and the space in the middle. So now when I click it, or hit enter, it fills in what I want it to fill in. And again, I can just copy this formula down, and I'm all set. So that's kind of a way you can use left. If you need mid or right, you can figure out what those do. Right just starts from the right side instead of the left side, and mid adds a separate element. So it's the same thing, it needs text, but then it wants the start number. So if I needed to start on the Y of Brian, then I will put a 3. So a 3, and then I need a number of characters, let's say still 5. And so now it starts with the Y. So it's a way to kind of extract data, especially if the table is standard. And it can be useful, again, in some niche cases. But that's what left, right, and mid do. The last bit is VLOOKUP. This will be the last formula I touch on. Again, if you want to learn more about index match, this is what the guide is showing. Again, the thing I'll send out afterward. I did my very best to try and illustrate what index match means. It is 2 formulas jammed into one, so it gets pretty darn complicated. But if you can figure out and memorize index match, you will immediately become best friends with all of your peers, all of your coworkers. I mean, at least those people who need stuff done in their spreadsheets. Index match is insanely powerful and insanely useful to help jam some reports together. VLOOKUP is the exact same, though, in this context. So 2 for 1, I'll kind of show VLOOKUP, it does the same sort of thing, but also why it doesn't work in all contexts and why index match would work really well. So if I click to this DTS tab, I have socials, the social header here, but the socials aren't filled in. So I need to get the socials. I have their full name with no comma or no, just the spaces, and I have their first, middle, and last names. So I want to be able to compare their full name here to their full name here and return the matched social from this sheet. The problem is this stuff isn't going to be just immediately in order, so I can't just copy and paste the social, and there is absolutely no way I'm hand jamming through all, 1,395 lines of this report to fill in their socials. So instead, I'm going to use VLOOKUP. So in the box that's missing the data, so my social, this is where I'm going to put my formula. So if I hit equals VLOOKUP and then open parenthesis, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to help hint me at least a little bit along the way of what I need to fill into here. Something I didn't note in the prior formula, anything that is not within brackets is required. So I need the lookup value, I need the table array, I need the column index number, and I do not necessarily need the range lookup. So keep that in mind. If it's in brackets, it's optional. You may not actually need it to complete your formula. But anyway, so lookup value, I'm going to take a wild guess. Actually, I know how to do VLOOKUP, so I'll just kind of walk you through it. Lookup value is going to be what we're going to use to compare to the other sheet. So think of it like you're a detective and you got a scrap of clothing and you're going to give it to a bloodhound. The bloodhound is going to sniff this as the scrap of clothing to go and find John Doe, the same sort of smell, in another location. So we're going to pull John or Doe John here. Actually, it's last name, first name. And we'll hit our comma. The table array is going to be where the dog is looking. So if John's in the woods, then the dog needs to go to the woods. So this is pointing where the information is actually contained. So within this context, we can click down to the BAQ tab here. And this is the woods. So we know we are going to need to pull the social. This is the information we're looking for. And this is what we're going to use to compare. So all I need are these two columns. If you want to go big, you can grab the entire report if you'd like. It's totally up to you. But we only need these two columns, the social and the name. So if I click back up here, I can continue the formula up in this little box, even though I'm in a different tab. I'm going to hit comma again. And now what it's looking for is the column index number. This is a little bit tricky because it is not asking for the column. It doesn't want you to put B to say it's social, because again, B it's a letter. It's not an index number. You need the column number that you're pulling from. So in this case, it would be column 1. So we selected these two columns here. This would be column 1, and this would be column 2. So we need column index number 1. We won't be using range lookup since that's optional. So I'll close parenthesis and I'll hit enter. And if all were to go well, the social would fill in here. But the problem is it's giving me a not applicable error. If you ever get this error, you can actually click here to try and figure out what the issue is. So this says value not available error. That didn't help me too much. So I can use my insight of VLOOKUP to realize, oh, VLOOKUP is actually the problem. So the way VLOOKUP works is, actually, let me click on the function. So in the description, it says it looks for a value in the leftmost column of a table. So it looks for it in the leftmost column of the woods, right, the forest. And then it returns a value in the same row from a column you specify. The problem that this thing is doing is that it's not looking in the leftmost column of the table, right? I had it look for a name, but the name is to the right of the social. So I'm not going to get where I need to be. It's an easy fix though for most people. If you're not doing a lot of standardized reporting stuff, you can just right click on the whole column here. You can cut, and then you can right click on this column here and insert cut cells, and it will swap the two around. So now that it's doing that, I'll click back over here. I need to relook at my formula here. So B7, that one is still good. It's looking at column C though. and I needed to look for the name. So I need to change this to column B. So we can just change this to B colon B. And I don't need 1 anymore. I need the second column. So if I change this to a 2 and I hit enter, now I'm going to get a reference error. And this one is actually unplanned, so let's figure this out. So looking at B7, oh, never mind, it was planned. Remember, this is all spaces without commas. This one has commas in it. So because my data is not exactly the way I want it to be, it's not going to pull the VLOOKUP properly. So this is, again, where flash fill can become useful if you are trying to compare 2 reports and the names aren't quite exact. So I'm just going to delete this column out. And I'm going to do my flash fill again. So I'm going to do Reba. I'll just put it in all caps. And then just a space and Amber. And then just a space M. I don't remember if the middle initials were included, so we'll find that out. We'll do our same thing, and there it goes. It'll fill it in without the spaces. And it actually did pull that stuff. Okay, good. So another issue that I'm running into, and this is good, are spaces at the end of the full names here. So John has a space at the end. This is an easy thing that people get hung up on when you're using this formula. It's going to include the spaces when it's trying to compare these things. So a way you can kind of fix this, there's a few ways. One, you can do that same flash fill. You can do also some complicated formulas if you like. That's definitely what I would like, but we'll just keep it simple, and we're gonna redo our flash fill here. So same thing, Doe, John, Jerica, Lois T, and there we go. This thing's now trying to still pull the same data from here, so we're just gonna change that back to B7. And I'm still getting my reference error. Let's try it from the start. Equals VLOOKUP, the value. Oh, I think I might know. The table array, I think, was off. So a table array. Yeah, I think it was only pulling that one column. That was my problem. And then column 2. There you go. So now, if I go and look for John Doe in this BAQ tab, I should get that same number. It is actually good practice to check the first couple and actually make sure the socials do match up. So you notice they actually don't in this case. I'm not going to actually troubleshoot that. There could be 2 John Does. But the problem is when you're doing VLOOKUP, if you have very large lists of people, your John Smiths may have their socials wrong. So you have to keep that stuff in mind when you're comparing common names. So you can actually use VLOOKUP or again index match to compare multiple things. Maybe you have the last 4 of their social, so you can compare that as well. Maybe you have their organization or an email address or something like that. Try to find the most unique values you can. But either way, if I drag this down, then it's going to fill in what I want it to fill in. Now it's got everybody's socials all filled in here. So that's kind of the power of VLOOKUP. Very useful. Can get finicky there. So you just have to make sure that, again, what data you're pulling is accurate. Kind of going back to what I said in the beginning. Make sure what your data is correct. Your formulas are doing what you need them to do. And that way you won't have any trouble when poor John Smith comes in and says you paid him, it's 15 separation payments when he should have gotten 0. So that's the power of VLOOKUP. Again, there are multiple formulas. Index match, I can just slam it in really quick if you want to see what index match can do. So this is what index match would look like. Index, the array is your woods. Oops, I'm still filtering that. So let's do index. Array just means your woods. I'll just grab B and C again. And then in row number, you're going to actually put in match, another formula. And so match is now my piece of clothing. So I'm going to match this name. I'll put comma, and I'm going to find it in what column it's in. So it's going to be in this column. And then I'm going to put comma, and it gives me a choice, less than, exact match, or greater than. For names, you always need exact match. Always, always, always. So we're going to put a 0, close parenthesis, Then we hit comma. You see column number is actually optional here. But the deal is we're pulling multiple columns. So we actually do need to know what column number it's in. Same deal, it's still in column 2. So if I close parenthesis, I'll get NA again. Things being mean to me. But that's kind of the gist of it as well. Oh, that's why, because John Doe just wasn't matching up properly, which would kind of explain that VLOOKUP giving the wrong social. Index match is really useful because it is an easy way of comparing multiple criteria. So if I have their name and I have their middle initial off to the side, or if I do have their organization, I can easily add those things into a single index formula, and it can compare as much data as I want it to compare to give me the right answer. But the other key is that these can be anywhere in the sheet. They can be before each other, after each other, wherever you want them to be. Index match will be able to find them properly. So yeah, it's 18 times more complicated, but it is very useful to know. So that's formulas. That's all I'll go in over formulas. I'm sure you guys have used other formulas and found value in them. I've used text a lot to help format certain things. Like for instance, FMF date. So what's today's date? June 11th, 2020, but I need that in FMF format. So if I do equals text, reference that, comma, and then quotes. This is just something you'll have to remember. YYMMDD, year, month, and day. You could put DMYYYY, and it'll just put whatever you basically put in there. And then you hit enter. And so now it's in FMF format. So that's how you can get your spreadsheets to show what you want it to show, so that you're not inputting this, instead you're inputting this. But that's all on formulas. So I have opened 20 minutes to myself to try and dig into more under the hood stuff. Excel has a lot of really awesome things on the front end that you see here up in this box, this formula, all of this stuff. But what's really, really neat about Excel is that it is built on its own unique programming language. So what that means is if you know this language, it's called VBA, Visual Basic for Applications. If you learn this programming language, you can actually learn how the heck, when I type in equals today, how the heck is it pulling in today's date? Like, how is it even getting to that? Like, how does it convert today into today's date? How is it using left? How is it doing all of those different formulas that we're using? And by understanding those, you can actually create your own custom formulas. So for instance, you saw equals that today. If I type in equals FMF today, which is a formula I wrote, it'll fill in today's date with the FMF formula. So you can do some small little neat things. You can do some bigger neat things. So if I go to my leave web list here, and just based on the fact that I have that information, I actually have them already punched in here. I have members ETSs. Of course, leave web's not the best place to look for ETSs, but we'll use it. And I want to see if their ETS is expired, if they're past that day. So if I put equals ETS, oh look, there's expired ETS. There's another one I wrote. And then I click on the day. It's going to tell me if it's expired or not. So if I drag this down, it'll only tell me if it's expired based on that. So that's kind of the power of functions. A function is basically your custom way of building a formula. Functions and formulas essentially are the exact same thing. We're going to get a peek at the hood, under the hood. If you have, I mean, many of you probably have computers in front of you. You're probably watching this over a computer, and hopefully you have Excel on that computer. Just open up Excel. If you have this particular one open, awesome. If you don't, just open up a blank one. I'm going to have you build your own function. I'm actually going to do the FMF today one, so I already spoiled the surprise. So in here, once you're in Excel, if you hold Alt and press F11, I'll actually type it in here for you. Alt plus F11. It's going to open up a new window. Mine's going to look a little bit different from yours because I'm using it on my personal computer and I actually use VBA a lot, and I need the background to be dark for the sake of my eyes. But when you open it up, it'll look something like this, except this black box will be white. There'll be some stuff off to the side here that more than likely looks something like this. And sorry, it'll actually be gray, not white. I lied to you a little bit. So it should look something like this. If Alt F11 does not bring it up at all, there is a weird roundabout way of getting into it. I can run through that super fast. If you right click in any blank space up here, customize the ribbon, and then there's a developer box down here. You just check that box and then hit OK. And then it'll add developer up to the top tabs here. And then there's a Visual Basic button. So pretty roundabout, but this is what will take you to VBA. Hopefully Alt F11 worked for you though. If you are on a laptop and using laptop keyboard, you may have to hit function. So Alt Fn and then F11, that may work for you as well. But what we're gonna put in this box, and I'm just gonna copy and paste it, is this text right here. Hopefully you can see it's a little bit small. I'm not able to zoom in, but go ahead and copy this exact text. So you type in the word function, space, FMF today. You can do all caps, you can do lowercase if you want, that's fine. Open, close parenthesis. If you type that in right, when you hit enter, it's gonna automatically add in function for you. And then just type in this little blurb of code right here. FMF today equals format, open parenthesis, now, comma, space, and then your year, month, day in quotes. Close the parenthesis off. If all went well and you typed it in correctly, when you click off of it, you should not get any issues. So let's say if I forgot that, it's gonna give me an error. So if you filled it in properly, you should be able to click off of it with no issues. And then you should be good to go. If you just minimize this little VBA window, you'll be back on Excel here. And now when you hit equals and you start typing in FMF today, it should either, it'll do this craziness right here, VBA project.module, yada, yada, or it'll just say FMF today. Either one works. So you can finish typing it in, just double click it here, whatever. Put in a close parenthesis or just hit enter. And it should give you FMF today. Oh, mine gave me an ambiguous name error because I already have the function here. So, oh, it's still filled in though. So that's kind of how you can do a function. So personally, I haven't done a whole lot with functions. I haven't really built any of my custom functions. Most of the stuff I made was for demonstration purposes, but it's something that you can just think about. If there's something that you're constantly typing in, or a formula or a group of formulas, you can probably find out a good way to put it into a function. Google is your friend, I'll say that. Google is how I've learned everything that I know. So functions, yeah, they help with the equals. There's something else other than functions though, also within VBA. So if you go into here, and they're called subroutines. Subroutines are essentially programs. So they are something that you can execute, something that you can run to make a whole bunch of crazy stuff happen. Every one of those tools I showed you that have buttons on them, those were run by subroutines. They were run by subs. So here's a way of making a sub happen. Again, follow along with me if you want to have a little bit of fun with this. I know it's Excel. It doesn't sound like it's going to be fun, but I promise it'll be fun and you'll be happy knowing you did this so you can mess with other people later on. If you type in sub and then just put in whatever you want here, ASDF, you can put in hello or hiya. It just can't be spaced out. Yep, got it, sir. So sub, hello, hiya, or whatever you want to put in here. In here, type in application dot speech dot speak. Now you probably have figured out where this is going. After you type in those things, you can hit space. And again, it's going to help you along. It's going to give you the little tooltips as context to show you, what to put in next. And here it says text as string. So remember what I said earlier, a string is just like any text you put in, like let's say hello, but it has to be in quotes or else it's not going to work. So remember your quotes and you'll be good to go. If you forget, it'll remind you. But if you filled this in properly, you click off of it, it should work out. Now up here on the top, there's a little play button. It also says F5, so you can just hit F5. But when you hit this button,
hello,
it's going to talk. You probably didn't hear it on my end because I'm video recording or I'm presenting a little different. But if you filled it in properly and you hit this, it's going to say hello. And yes, it's going to sound like Microsoft Sam, to sound like a little robot or whatnot. But it's pretty interesting stuff. You can put in your name, see how well it does at saying your name, especially if you have a weird name like mine. You can make it say, welcome to finance. You can make it say some lewd things, which I wouldn't recommend, but have your fun with it. So this is a way you can actually make Excel talk. And yes, I found that out on accident. The very last thing I'll talk about is how to link your subroutine, link your program with a button on the actual spreadsheet. So there is a button. It's hidden within the customize the ribbon. So you can look for it in here, all commands, and then eventually search for it. It's just called button. Or you can, have more fun with it and just draw a shape. So in here, I'm just going to make a happy face. I'll just make my little happy face here. I'll make them green. And then if you right click on this works for any image, hit assign macro. And then whatever you named that sub will show up in this list here. So when you do that, now when I click it,
hello,
it'll say hello. It'll run whatever I put in there. So that's a nice, quick little basic, goodness. That's a nice, quick little basic way of showing what a sub is, what it can do, and just keeping in mind that it can go beyond Excel. It can open up other workbooks. It can open up an email and fill in the body, as you have seen. It can open up notepads and fill things into there. It can access your media player. It can do basically anything on your computer. So with that, there's a caveat. If you don't know somebody who is sending you a random Excel macro, don't enable macros and run them, because they can do all kinds of stuff. I used to prank people by making it open up calculator 1,000 times and close it 1,000 times. And they had to sit there and either watch for 5 minutes before it finished, or they had to just turn their computer off. So you can be pretty mean with this stuff. I'm not saying to do it, obviously, but just keep in mind what you're running. Pay attention to the scripts and make sure that you're only running stuff from people you trust. Like me, I promise I've changed. I'm not going to send you craziness anymore. And so that's been my presentation. I hope you guys liked it. It's about 2 solid hours in there. May have been a few things that I missed here and there, but that's the gist of it. So if you do have other ideas or questions or curiosities about what you've seen people do in Excel, by all means, reach out. I love to learn. So if I don't know it, I will learn it and tell you about it. If I do know it, I'll be glad to tell you about it. I think there was one last thing. Oh, yes. Scenarios, homework. So if you want to practice some of this stuff, same thing in these files that I send out. Yes, how long does it take for calculator to open? Depends on what you're using. If you're using one of these government laptops, you might as well go to lunch. If you're using a more powerful computer, it could do it pretty quick. Unless it has a data overload and it can't handle having calculator open that many times, then it might just totally crash and blue screen. But anyway, so these scenarios, I will put them out there. It's just for you to practice, maybe enjoy. It has a couple little questions as a fun little list of just random objects and costs. So I'll send that out if you want to kind of play around and practice and see how you do with using formulas. It'll kind of help you set that stuff up. And that's all I have. If there's any questions over the next couple of minutes, I will stay on in this meeting as long as it's not going to be used by another presenter. I will stay in this meeting for however long you would like afterward, and I'm here for you. Thank you, guys.
Hey, Sergeant Spaeth, okay, crushed it. Great job. Really enjoyed the presentation. I know for myself, understanding Excel has been definitely key in our ability to function in our career field. So we greatly appreciate you taking the time to teach us some of the basic tools, as well as the different resources that you guys have coming out. I think it's going to be great for our folks. Definitely going to save a lot of time and help out our FMers. So thank you again on behalf of the Air Force Global Strike Command Virtual PDI team for taking the time today. As for the documents and recordings, all that's going to be posted out to the Global Strike FM SharePoint page. I believe Mary Lane has put the link out there in the chat. But with that, if there's no more questions, the next briefing is FM certification or Certified Defense Financial Manager briefing at 1500. Thank you all for attending today. And I'm going to go ahead and close this chat so I can join that next meeting if that's all right, Sergeant Spaeth. All right. All right, thanks so much, guys. We're going to close up. Thanks again, Sergeant Spaeth. We appreciate it.
Sorry, I was muted there. I was just saying it's just fine. If you have any questions, just hit me up on Facebook or email or wherever, and I'll happily help out. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks again. Take care.
Ciao.